The air here is thick. It feels like you could hold it in your hands. We are deep inside a rainforest in Costa Rica. Sunlight tries to reach the ground, but it struggles. It comes down in thin, golden lines, like threads of light. These threads touch the giant leaves of ferns, the dark, damp soil. Everything is green. There are so many shades of green you cannot count them all. Dark emerald, bright lime, soft, mossy tones. The sounds are a constant hum. Insects buzz. Unseen birds call out from high above. Leaves rustle with a gentle sigh. I came here to understand a story. It is a story of loss and rebirth. This place, so full of life now, was not always this way. To stand here is to stand in a miracle, a testament to nature's quiet power. Walking through this forest is like walking through a living cathedral. Tall trees as pillars, branches forming a vaulted ceiling high above. Light filtering through leaves creates patterns on the forest floor, like stained glass. Every step is soft, cushioned by a thick layer of fallen leaves. I touch the rough bark of a ceiba tree. Wrinkles and crevices. It feels solid and strong, a silent witness to change. It asks you to slow down, to notice the small things. A line of leaf-cutter ants marches across my path, each one carrying a piece of green leaf, like a tiny flag. A lizard, perfectly camouflaged, darts across a moss-covered log. It's an overwhelming presence. It is a story I am here to learn and to share. This vibrant world was once wounded. It is hard to imagine now, surrounded by such abundance. But not so long ago, large parts of this forest were barren. The great trees that formed the canopy were gone, cut down for timber. The land was scarred by human activity, left open and exposed to the harsh tropical sun. Where there is now a deep, complex shade, there was once only glaring light and dry, cracked earth. The silence then was not the peaceful quiet of a healthy ecosystem, but the empty silence of absence. The life that had thrived here for centuries had vanished in a very short time. There are clearings where the new growth is younger and shorter than the ancient trees surrounding it. The land remembers its injuries, but nature is resilient. It holds a deep capacity for healing, a slow and patient strength that can overcome great destruction. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, a change began. A silent, determined flight. And then the butterflies came. At first, it was just a few, then more, and more, until the air seemed to shimmer with them. They danced in the columns of sunlight, their wings like tiny stained glass windows. They were a sign, a promise of what was to come. They were not just beautiful visitors, they were agents of change, and seeds needed for the forest to be reborn. This brings me to the central question of my journey. It is a simple question, yet its answer is profound and complex. How did these delicate creatures, these butterflies, help an entire rainforest return from the brink of death? It seems almost impossible. A butterfly is so small, so fragile. Its life is so short. How can something so ephemeral be responsible for something so monumental as the rebirth of a forest? This is the mystery I have come here to explore. The answer is not found in grand gestures, but in millions of tiny, repeated actions. It lies in the way a butterfly moves from flower to flower, its legs dusted with golden pollen. It is in the way it lands on a piece of fallen fruit, inadvertently picking up a sticky seed on its body. These small, almost accidental acts, when multiplied by thousands and then millions of butterflies over many seasons, become a powerful force of creation. Scientists have watched this process unfold. They have tracked the butterflies, studied their flight paths, and observed their interactions with the plants. They have seen how certain species of butterflies are drawn to specific flowers, ensuring that pollen is carried to the right place. They have documented how seeds, carried on the bodies of these insects, are transported to new areas, allowing pioneer plants to take root in the barren soil. These plants, in turn, create shade, improve the soil, paving the way for other, larger species to grow. It is a slow, cascading effect, all started by the flutter of a wing. As I stand here, a flash of brilliant blue catches my eye. A blue morpho butterfly drifts past, its iridescent wings flashing in a sliver of sunlight before disappearing into the shadows. The forest is alive with this truth. The story of this rebirth begins with a great and profound loss. Before the green returned, there was a vast emptiness. The chainsaws had sung their terrible song here, felling ancient trees that had stood for centuries. The timber trade saw only profit in their massive trunks, not the life they supported. The forest floor, once a cool, damp world of shade and soft decay, was suddenly exposed. The sun beat down without mercy, baking the delicate soil into a hard, cracked crust that could no longer hold the precious rain. In some places, fires followed to clear undergrowth for cattle. The flames consumed what little life was left, turning rich, dark earth to ash. The complex community of plants and animals that thrived in the deep shade vanished. All were gone. The streams that once ran clear turned muddy with runoff, choked with soil no longer held in place. There were no bird calls to greet the dawn. The rustle of unseen animals in the undergrowth was replaced by the lonely sound of wind whistling across a barren landscape. It was a place of ghosts, haunted by the echoes of the life that had been so carelessly erased, a wound on the face of the earth that seemed too deep to ever heal. The land itself bore the deep scars of its ordeal. Where giant buttress roots once anchored the soil, there were now gaping holes and eroding gullies. The tropical rains became a force of destruction on the bare land. With no canopy to break their fall and no root systems to absorb their impact, the downpours washed away the precious topsoil. Its loss was catastrophic. A sterile mix of clay and rock remained. Tough, scrubby grasses took hold. Invasive ferns took hold. Their shallow roots did little to stabilize the eroding ground. The few trees that remained were isolated and exposed. They stood like lonely sentinels, seeds falling onto barren ground with little chance to grow. The delicate mosses, lichens that coated the bark, withered in direct sun. Shade-loving plants on the floor shriveled and died. What was left was a simplified, impoverished ecosystem. Walking these areas today, you can feel the difference under your feet. The ground is harder, the air is warmer. The rich, loamy smell of a healthy forest is absent, replaced by dust and sun-baked grass. These scarred lands are a stark reminder of fragility. They are the first chapter in this story of rebirth, a chapter of deep and lasting injury. There is a man who walks these paths every day. His name is Matteo, and he has been a ranger here for over 30 years. His face is lined like the bark of an old tree, and his eyes hold the long memory of this place. He knew the forest before the destruction, and he walked through it during its darkest days. He points to a clearing now filled with young, vibrant trees and tells me what it used to be called. "We called this place El Silencio," he says, his voice quiet. The silence. Matteo's walks in those years were lonely patrols through a ghost forest. Here, he would say to himself, is where the howler monkeys used to greet the dawn. This was the stream where the poison dart frogs were like jewels on the rocks. He explains how few seeds remained. The great seed-bearing trees were gone. The animals that spread those seeds, like monkeys, toucans, and agoutis, had also vanished. The engine of regeneration had stalled, and the forest was stuck in a state of arrested development, unable to heal its own wounds. He walked the paths, noting the small changes, or the lack thereof. He saw the soil washing away with every storm. He felt the silence in his bones, a constant ache for the life that was gone. But he never lost hope. He watched and waited, his presence a quiet act of faith. He knew that for life to return, something had to bridge the gap. He just didn't know what it would be. In a healthy rainforest, the air is never empty. It is a three-dimensional highway, bustling with life. But in the wounded forest, the air was hollow. The brilliant flash of a quetzal, gone. The loud call of a macaw, gone. The busy chatter of tanagers, gone. Fruit-eating birds are master seed dispersers. They carry seeds in their gut and deposit them far from the parent tree, often with a small patch of fertilizer. Without birds, one of the forest's primary regeneration methods failed. Silence in the canopy matched the stillness on the ground. The cycle was broken. The web of relationships was torn. The forest couldn't expand or reclaim lost territory. No constant hum and buzz, only profound quiet. The air smelled of dust, not damp earth or blooms. Each absence fed another, a vicious cycle of decline. The forest was trapped in a wound that could not close. Without major outside intervention, this land would remain a permanent shadow of what it once was. Then, after a long period of stillness, something began to change. It was a change so small, so quiet, that at first, it was almost imperceptible. It began in the leaf litter. Tiny decomposers started the slow work of breaking down the dead wood left by the loggers, gradually turning it back into soil. Small hardy beetles, ants, able to withstand the harsh sun, began to forage among the scrubby new growth, creating tiny pathways and aerating the compacted earth. This was the first stirring of life in the deep silence. These small creatures were the unseen, unsung heroes of the recovery. Their tireless work, though microscopic in scale, was fundamental. Matteo, the ranger, noticed this subtle shift. He saw new patterns of activity on the forest floor. He knew that where insects are, other life will eventually follow. They are the foundation upon which the entire forest ecosystem is built. It was evidence that the land was not completely dead. It still held a spark of life, a resilient core that had weathered the destruction and was now tentatively beginning to reassert itself against the emptiness. The stage was being set for the next act in this incredible drama of renewal. A new kind of life was about to arrive. A life of color, movement, transformative power. The butterflies were coming. After the long, desolate quiet, the first sign of a grander change was not a sound, but a flicker of movement. A single butterfly, perhaps a vibrant orange Julia, would drift out from the safety of the trees. For a long time this was all. These brief excursions were like tiny scouting missions. Then, slowly, the numbers grew. A few brave individuals, a small cloud, a shimmering multitude. The butterflies arrived in waves, each species with its own timing, its own preferred season. The air began to feel alive again, filled with the silent, graceful flight of thousands of tiny wings. Deep blues, fiery oranges, brilliant yellows, stark whites painted the air, a living palette that signaled a profound shift in the forest's fortune. The arrival was not just beautiful, it was transformative. They were active participants, agents of change arriving in force. To walk through the clearings was no longer a lonely, sorrowful experience. It was to be surrounded by a silent, swirling dance of life. The butterflies would land on my arms and shoulders, their delicate legs tickling my skin, before taking flight once more. They represented a tangible connection to the process of healing. They were the first answer to the question of how this forest could possibly recover. The answer, it seemed, was not going to be a single grand event, but a million tiny, beautiful and determined acts of flight. The butterflies were more than just a beautiful sight. They were essential workers engaged in a critical task. The few hardy plants that had managed to grow in the barren clearings needed help to reproduce. Without pollinators, their seeds would never form. As they moved from one blossom to the next, their fuzzy bodies and delicate legs became dusted with golden pollen, the very essence of plant life. A heliconius butterfly, for example, might focus on the passion flowers. As it travels between these specific flowers, it ensures that the pollen is delivered exactly where it needs to go. The butterflies were acting as tiny, winged matchmakers, connecting individual plants across the landscape and allowing a new generation to be born. They were quite literally stitching the fabric of the plant community back together. The effect is the fertilization of a flower, which leads to the production of fruit and seeds. The pioneer plants, which are tough enough to grow in the poor soil, were the first to benefit. Their roots helped to stabilize the soil, and their leaves provided the first patches of new shade, cooling the ground beneath them. The butterflies, in their relentless search for nectar, were kick-starting this entire cascade of renewal. They were the architects of a new green world. Every flower they visited was a small act of construction, a tiny but essential step in the slow rebuilding of this vast and wounded ecosystem. Here in the reserve, I met a scientist named Dr. Arlene Campos. She has dedicated her career to studying these butterflies. They set up transects, long, straight lines cutting across the recovering forest. Walking these lines at the same time each day, her team records every butterfly they see. They note the species, the number of individuals, and their behavior. Dr. Campos showed me charts filled with data, the rising lines a testament to the return of life. It was the forest's heartbeat, captured in numbers and graphs. To understand how butterflies help the forest, they track pollen movement. Using fluorescent powder, they gently capture a butterfly, then dust it with a small amount of harmless, brightly colored powder. The butterfly is released and flies off searching for nectar. Later, scientists use a blacklight to see where the powder landed, revealing flight paths from flower to flower. It shows how far they can carry pollen, connecting plants hundreds of meters apart, bridging gaps between isolated vegetation. It was visible evidence of the healing process, a line of light drawn by a butterfly. Pollination was just the first part of the story. The butterflies played another, equally crucial role, that of accidental seed dispersers. They land on this mushy pulp to feed on the sugary liquids, and in the process, something remarkable happens. When a butterfly lands on a piece of fallen fruit, these tiny seeds can easily adhere to its legs or body. The butterfly, after feeding, will then fly away, carrying its microscopic cargo with it. It might travel a few meters, or a few hundred meters. As it lands, the seeds can be brushed off, falling to the ground in a new location, far from the parent plant. This was a method of seed dispersal the forest desperately needed. Think of the thousands of butterflies, each potentially carrying a few seeds on every journey. This amounts to a constant shower of new life being scattered across the barren lands. It allowed the pioneer plants to colonize new ground, to march steadily into the empty spaces. They grew quickly, creating shade and dropping leaves that began to form a new layer of humus on the soil. They were preparing the ground for the next stage of succession, for the larger trees that would eventually follow. All of this was made possible by the unwitting work of the butterflies, the tiny winged gardeners of the recovering forest. The effect of this butterfly-driven seeding was visible on the landscape. The clearings began to transform. Where there was once only baked earth, sparse grass, a new layer of green began to appear. The first to arrive were the pioneer plants, whose seeds had been carried by the butterflies. Species like the aforementioned Miconia shrubs, their broad leaves creating precious patches of shade, like small umbrellas opening up across the sun-scorched land. The shade from the pioneer plants cooled the soil, reducing evaporation, allowing it to retain more moisture. As their leaves fell and decayed, they began to build a new layer of topsoil, enriching the sterile ground with organic matter. Their roots broke up the compacted earth, creating channels for air, creating channels for water. In essence, these first plants, brought by the butterflies, were terraforming the wasteland, improving the soil for the next generation of trees. Matteo, the old ranger, watched this transformation with a deep sense of satisfaction. He explained that as these shrubs grew, they created a new habitat. The return of the plants meant the return of the insects that fed on them, which in turn attracted the first insect-eating birds. A new, more complex food web was being woven, thread by tiny thread. The green world that followed in their wake is their enduring legacy, a living monument to the power of the small. As months turned into years, the landscape continued its slow, miraculous transformation. Beneath their protective shade, the seeds of larger, more slow-growing trees began to germinate. These were the true giants of the rainforest. Slowly, their saplings began to push upwards, reaching for the light. This was the next crucial phase of the forest's rebirth, the closing of the canopy. The harsh, direct sunlight that had once baked the earth was replaced by a soft, dappled light. The air beneath this new canopy became cooler and more humid, trapping the moisture that is the lifeblood of the rainforest. The closing of the canopy created a whole new world of habitats. The branches became highways and homes for arboreal creatures. Orchids, bromeliads, began to colonize the branches of the new trees, their seeds perhaps carried on the wind or by birds. The forest was gaining height and complexity, becoming a three-dimensional ecosystem once again. Nature was following its ancient blueprint for recovery. First came the small, fast-growing pioneers. Then, protected by them, the larger, more permanent species could take root. The work of the butterflies in the early years had been essential, but now the forest itself was generating its own momentum. The system was beginning to self-sustain, to grow and diversify on its own, a sign that the healing was becoming deep and lasting. The forest was truly coming back to life. One of the most joyful signs of the forest's recovery was the return of the birds. Then, as the pioneer shrubs began to produce berries and the insect populations exploded, the birds started to come back. At first it was the small insect eaters, flycatchers, warblers, darting through the new undergrowth. Their chirps and calls were the first notes in a new symphony, breaking the long silence. They were followed by the fruit eaters, tanagers, thrushes, drawn in by the promise of food. A bird can consume a fruit in one location and deposit the seed, encased in its own packet of fertilizer kilometers away. They were now doing the heavy lifting of regeneration. Then came the bigger birds. The loud, raucous calls of toucans, with their enormous, colorful bills, began to echo through the canopy once more. Monkeys, whose howling cries are the quintessential sound of the Costa Rican rainforest, were spotted moving through the newly connected treetops. These larger animals are critical for dispersing the seeds of the big canopy trees. Their return signaled that the forest was now mature enough to support a full spectrum of life. The food web was becoming whole again, from the smallest insect to the largest mammal. The forest was no longer silent. It was filled with a constant chorus of life. It was the sound of life coming back, a vibrant, joyful noise that filled every corner of the reborn forest. The recovery of the forest was not just happening above ground. A silent, secret, and equally important revival was taking place beneath the soil. As the new layer of leaf litter deepened, the fungi began to return. This vast, hidden network of mycelium is like the forest's nervous system. a web of tiny threads that connects everything. These fungi are not just decomposers, breaking down dead wood and leaves into nutrients. They form vital partnerships with the roots of the trees. This symbiotic relationship, called mycorrhiza, is fundamental to the health of the forest. The fungal threads extend far beyond the reach of a tree's own roots, acting as a massive extension that can absorb water and essential minerals. It is a partnership of mutual benefit, allowing trees to grow in soils that would otherwise be too poor to support them. The return of this fungal network had a profound impact on the pace of regeneration. The young trees could grow faster and stronger. The network also allows trees to communicate. The forest was not just a collection of individual trees. It was becoming a connected, cooperative community. As I walk the path with Matteo, he points to a cluster of colorful mushrooms. "When you see these," he says with a smile, "you know the soil is alive again." The soil, once sterile and broken, is now a living, breathing entity, teeming with microscopic life. This silent, underground recovery, this whispering of the fungi, is the secret engine driving the vibrant green world that has returned to the surface. The rebirth of the forest was not just an ecological story, it was a human one. I spoke with a woman named Elena, who has lived in a small village bordering the reserve her whole life. Her grandmother used to take her into the old forest to gather wild foods. When the forest was cleared, that tradition was lost. For a generation, the forest provided nothing but a sad view of a barren landscape. Elena told me of the day when she was walking along the edge of the recovering area and saw a familiar shape at the base of a log. It was a type of edible mushroom her grandmother had described. She cautiously harvested a few and took them home. Their earthy flavor was a taste of the past, a direct connection to the forest her ancestors had known. It was a small moment, but for her, it was deeply significant. The forest was beginning to give back. Slowly, other familiar plants began to reappear. The vines that provide fibers for weaving baskets began to climb the new trees. For Elena and her community, this was more than just the return of plants. It was the return of a way of life. Elena now leads small groups of children into the reborn forest. She shows them which fruits are safe to eat, which leaves can be used for tea, and which mushrooms to look for after the rains. They are learning that a living forest is a gift. The harvest, however small, is a tangible benefit of conservation, a delicious reward for the patience and care that allowed life to return. While nature did the heavy lifting, the recovery of this forest was also aided by small, thoughtful human actions. One of their most important decisions was simply to protect the few old trees that had survived the logging. These ancient giants were invaluable. They also served as magnets for wildlife, providing the seeds and the fauna that would eventually recolonize the surrounding land. In some of the most badly damaged areas, small-scale planting took place. Volunteers from the local village planted a diverse mix of native species. They focused on creating small islands of fertility that would act as catalysts for natural regeneration. Perhaps the most important human act was the creation of gentle paths. This allowed people to access the forest, to monitor its health and appreciate its beauty without causing further damage. These small human acts, protecting, planting, and walking softly, were guided by a deep respect for the forest's own power to heal. They show that our relationship with nature does not have to be one of domination. It can be a partnership. Our role can be one of a gentle gardener, a careful listener, a patient partner with the natural world. The story of this forest's rebirth is not just a tale of nature's power. It is also a story of people. It was a circle of collaboration that included local villagers, dedicated rangers, and inquisitive scientists. Each group brought its own knowledge, its own skills, and its own perspective. The local community brought an invaluable, deep-rooted knowledge. They understood the seasons, the local plants, and the history of the land. The rangers, like Matteo, acted as the bridge between the community and the science. They were the daily guardians of the land. The scientists provided the tools for systematic observation and analysis. Their scientific methods helped to confirm the effectiveness of the community's efforts and provided data that could guide future decisions. This wasn't a case of scientists dictating to the community. Instead, they worked together, with the scientists often learning as much from the local knowledge. This collaboration created a powerful synergy. It was a constant flowing exchange of information, a conversation between different ways of knowing. The success of this collaboration wasn't built on complexity. The community, rangers, and scientists agreed on simple, clear rules. The first and most important rule: no cutting. This applied to ancient trees and even the smallest new sapling. The goal was to let nature lead, stop causing harm. The era of extraction ended, the era of protection began. The second rule: small projects, big diversity. They created small islands of life in the most degraded zones. The community collected seeds from a wide variety of native plants. This ensured genetic diversity. They avoided monocultures at all costs. A healthy forest is a mixed community. A third key principle involved monitoring. School children were taught to identify and count butterflies. Villagers reported new birds and mammals returning. Citizen science did more than gather information. It fostered ownership and engagement. Everyone was a researcher, a guardian, and a participant. They were all watching and learning together. This simple code empowered everyone to play a role. A grassroots approach, powerful and effective. In my conversations with the people involved in this project, one word came up again and again: listening. They understood that nature has its own pace and its own wisdom. The project's success was rooted in their decision to set aside human impatience and pay close attention to the signals the land was sending. When they saw that butterflies were effectively seeding the pioneer shrubs, they didn't interfere. They stepped back and let the process unfold. It seems you have learned the art of patience. The forest does not hurry. Why should we? This is the profound lesson of this place. The human desire for quick results is often at odds with the slow, deliberate rhythms of the natural world. By learning to slow down, to listen, and to respond to the forest's own pace, this community discovered a more effective and sustainable path to healing. The journey of this forest's rebirth has been filled with incredible successes. The return of biodiversity is a measurable triumph. Butterfly species up over 300%. Bird species that had been absent for a generation are now nesting. Ecotourism has begun to develop in a slow, controlled way, providing sustainable income for local families. The forest's health and the community's well-being have become inextricably linked. However, the path has not been without its setbacks. In the early years, a prolonged drought caused many of the newly planted saplings to wither and die. In another instance, a non-native, invasive plant species began to spread rapidly, threatening to outcompete the native pioneers. The community had to mobilize quickly, working together to manually remove the invasive plants. These setbacks were not seen as failures, but as learning opportunities. Each challenge forced the collaborative group to adapt and refine their strategies. As I reflect on my time here, the most profound lesson is one of patience. Its recovery is the work of a generation, a slow and steady process built on millions of tiny, incremental actions. This is the patience of a forest. This patience was mirrored by the people who nurtured it. To work for something you may not see completed in your own lifetime is a faith in the future, a gift to the next generation, embodied in the act of planting a tree whose shade you may never sit in. The success here was not measured by quarterly reports. It was measured by the return of a bird's song, by the taste of a wild mushroom, by the increasing depth of the shade on the forest floor. The people here have learned to align their own sense of time with the forest's time, a slower, more cyclical rhythm. This slow, patient work is ultimately an act of profound hope. It shows that by working together, and by learning to listen, we can help to mend the broken places of our world. One butterfly, one tree, one patient day at a time. My journey into this reborn forest is now coming to a quiet close. The story I came here to understand is now written all around me, not in words, but in leaves, wings, and the rich dark soil under my feet. The central idea is both simple and profound. Even the largest and most devastating wounds can be healed by the smallest and most delicate of things. It was woven together by a million tiny threads of connection. Each action on it seems insignificant. But together, these small acts accumulate into a force of creation. This place teaches us to see the immense value in the small, the overlooked, and the fragile. These gentle human acts, guided by listening and respect, created the safe space that allowed nature's own healing powers to flourish. This story, therefore, offers a profound sense of hope. It is easy to feel that our individual actions are meaningless, but this forest argues otherwise. The power of the small is the power of collective hope in action. As the sun begins to set, the light in the forest changes. The daytime butterflies, their work now done, begin to settle for the night. They find shelter on the undersides of large leaves, their vibrant wings closing like tiny prayer books. A blue morpho, a flash of electric blue just an hour ago, now shows only the cryptic brown, eye-spotted pattern of its underwings. The frantic energy of the day gives way to a deep and peaceful calm. This transition from day to night feels like a final, gentle lesson. It is a reminder that life operates in cycles of action and rest, of growth and stillness. The hope this place inspires is not a loud, frantic optimism. It is a quiet, steady confidence, like the feeling of this dusk. It is a hope rooted in the understanding that life is resilient and that healing, though slow, is always possible. My final memory of this place will be this sensory image. It is a symphony of a healthy, living ecosystem, one that was painstakingly rebuilt from silence and emptiness. It is a powerful reminder that what was lost can, with care and collaboration, be found again, and that beauty can re-emerge from the deepest of scars. The invitation is simply to notice, to pay attention to the small lives and intricate connections that exist in the natural world around us. The story of the Butterfly-Reborn forest is a story for our time. It is a narrative of hope, a blueprint for healing, and a quiet promise that if we listen closely and act gently, we can help life in all its fragile, beautiful forms to flourish once more. Thank you for joining Papillon Chateau. If this video resonated with you, please follow us on Facebook and subscribe on YouTube for more stories of the power and resilience of nature. And remember, at Papillon Chateau, every wing tells a story.